Hey, this is Brock Lemires, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to search for a value in an array. Okay, so once again, you look for things in an array using for loops, and that allows you to use the loop variable to walk through the array one by one and do things such as check whether it's a minimum, a maximum, or if it's a particular value. So in this situation, what we're going to do is we're going to have an array that'll have 5 values in it, all of type integer, and we'll have another variable that is going to be what we're looking for. And we're basically going to write some code that's going to walk through this and say, is this value held in the variable named val in here? And what you do is if it is in there, you record the index, because when you search for something in an array, you're doing it because you want to go back and access it later. And so what you do is you set up a variable called whatever, I'm going to call it found index. And as you walk through it with the for loop, if you ever see that value, go ahead and record the index. And also at the same time, you can set what we call a flag. So a flag is something that is a variable and you set it to 0 when you start. And then if anything happens that you want to track, you can assert it or set it to 1. And why that's important is because you can walk through the array, and if you ever find the value, you assert the flag, and the flag stays at 1 all the way through. And once you're done, you can look at the found flag and say, hey, it was in here. If it doesn't get set to 1, then that means it was not in the array. And we can use that to basically report out and whether that thing was, whether the value we wanted was in the array. All right, so let's do it. Okay, so here we go. I'm in my home directory. I'm logged into the Linux server, and I'm going to go ahead and change into my mod08 folder, and I'm going to create a file called array_search. So I'm going to do vim array_search.c, and now I'm in vim. Okay, so I'm going to do searching array. And go ahead and pop. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by pound include, bring in the standard io.h header file because I want to use printf. And then I'll set up the shell for my main function. So I'll do int main void open curly, come on down, return 0 and close curly. Go ahead and save that buddy up. And now I'm ready to go. So let's create our array, and it will be called E. It's going to have 5 elements in it. And we'll initialize it, and each of these values is going to be of type integer. So that's what this int here means. And let's put integers in it. So we'll do 3, 5, 9, -2, and 22. And that now is initialized. And then we'll do an integer for val. And this will be what we're going to look for in the array. And we'll mess around with a couple different values, but let's start it at 2, which 2's not going to be in there. So we'll start with that, and it won't find it. And then we'll do another integer, which is going to be my found flag. Let's go ahead and initialize that at 0. And then we'll do found index, and this is going to hold the index if we find one. And we'll go ahead and we'll set that to 0 just initially. And then we'll go ahead and say int, and we'll go I, and that's going to be our loop variable. Okay. All right. So here we go. We're going to walk down here and we're going to do the following. I'm going to start a for loop, and I'm going to walk through each element in the array. So I'll set my loop variable, initialize it to 0. My Boolean expression will be stay in here as long as you're less than 5, meaning you'll go through each index in the array, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then each time you complete the loop, go ahead and increment, and then we'll open a curly, close curly. And now I'm ready to come in here and put a conditional statement. What I want to do is I want to look and say if the current value of the array at index I, and that I comes from the loop variable, is equal to val, I want to do something. Notice that I'm using the equality operator here. So this is equal, and this will return a Boolean value of either 1 or 0. All right. So if it is equal to that, we will say found flag equals 1. And we will also say found index equals I. And that will track, that will store off whatever the value of I is. And since we're kind of doing this for the first time algorithmically, let's go ahead and print out, let's go ahead and print out a message if we find it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say printf, and I'll go found it at index, and then we'll print out the index number. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll say I, and life is good. Okay, so that is the true case for the if. And then let's go ahead and put an else that just says otherwise. If you don't find it, say printf not at index, and then we'll go ahead and do that. All right, dot dot dot. And we'll do a line return, and then we'll close it up, and then we'll say okay, and then let's save that. Let's think about what happened here. Okay, so it's going to walk through each element in the array. And while it does that, it's going to say, hey, if you're equal to val, your particular element in the array, let me pull this down so you can see the array. If it's equal to val, go ahead and set the flags, record the index, and print a message. Otherwise, go ahead and just print, nah, it's not at this index, but we're going to print out the index. So we'll see this for loop print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, along with a message of whether or not it found it. Okay, so that is good. And so let's go ahead and run this, and then we'll see how we use the flags. Okay, so here I am, I'm down here, I'm going to go into my mod 08 folder that I'm working in, and I take a look around, and here it is, array search. That's what I just created. Let's GCC this. So I'm going to go GCC array search.c, direct the output to an executable called array search. And let me pull this over so it doesn't wrap. And let's go ahead and run it. Let's do it again with warnings all. And it's complaining you got some variables you didn't use. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. I realize that. Let me clear that up. Let's go ahead and compile it without wall now that we know that it only has a few warnings, I understand. And let's run it. Sunny Holland, meaning / look in this folder for the executable, not in the Linux path. And here we go. Not at index 0, not at index 1, not at index 2, not at index 3, not at index 4. Sweet. So it did go through there, but let's now change val to be something that actually is in there. So let's change it to like -2. Okay, so now let's come down here and let's compile it and let's run it. And it's like, oh, not at 0, not at 1, not at 2. Found it at index 3, not at index 4. It's like, all right, that's cool. We did it. We did it. But now let's look at how you use the flag, right? So now let me do this. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, outside of this loop that actually searched it, let's see how we can use the flag to basically selectively print whether or not we found something. So I'm going to say if found flag equals 1. Remember, found flag, I'm going to use the equal, which is an equality operator. That's going to return a Boolean expression of 0 or 1. And we will say, if that's true, go ahead and print a message that says found and put the value at index and then put the index. Okay, so that'll be our message. Let's go ahead and do a line return. And then right here, let's actually use found index to prove to ourselves that we can use it in the array as an index. So I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to go E and then square bracket, and then I'm going to go found index, and that will return whatever value it was. So in this situation, it should return -2. And then otherwise, I'm going to put, let me come back over here. I'm going to actually print found index. So I'm going to drag this even more over, and I'll put found index, and then I'm good to go. Okay, so this printf right here is going to say found, and I'm going to print the value using found index as the index into the array at index, and I'm going to print the integer index that we recorded. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to close that curly. Otherwise, go ahead and print another message that says didn't find the value in this array. Okay, and what we'll do is this time we'll just print val, and that'll prove that, I mean, if it's not in here, this won't work, right? Okay, all right, this is awesome. All right, so let's check this out now. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and let me move this down a little bit so you can see the if else statements. So now here, what's what I'm going to do? I'm going to GCC this little buddy. And I'm going to do with warnings all, because that'll show me I shouldn't have any warnings. Let me clear that little fella up. I'm going to go Sunny Holland, array search. Ready for this? Boom. Not at 0, not at 1, not at 2. Found it, not at 4. Then I said, found -2 at index 3. And it printed this message because the flag was set. All right, that's cool. Let's go test this under a couple other conditions. Let's do 22. Okay. And let's go ahead and let's compile that and then run it. And it's like, oh, found 22 at index 4. Life is good. Everything's working. Now let's test it to see if you put a number in here like 100 and it's not in the array, will the flag logic actually work? And so down here, what I mean by flag logic is, will this actually say, hey, the flag wasn't set, you're going to print, didn't find it in this array. GCC it, run it. Oh no, didn't find 100 in this array. Okay, we did it. Life is good. We have just written the code to traverse an array using for loop and search for a value. And we introduced the concept of a flag and recording the index of the array where the value was stored. All right, that is it, and see ya.